I hope that what this list does is help to focus your dreams. Hey, how's it going? I'm Brad Dollar, producer, engineer, and coach. Thanks so much for joining me here today. Dreaming about studio gear is one of my favorite pastimes, and as far as I can tell, the same is true for many artists, producers, and engineers. Lusting after equipment is just part of falling in love with the art of recording. And for a lot of us, the stuff we want most tends to be the most expensive. But with so many options, how do you know what to even dream about, let alone buy? So in this video, I'm going to highlight some of the best high-end expensive gear that you can buy so that you can budget, save, and dream accordingly. 2 points about this video. I'm only going to talk about gear that I've actually used and experienced making music with, and 2, I'm not going to mention any vintage gear. Vintage gear is in its own ballpark, in its own world, and I'll make another video for you about that. So all of the gear mentioned here is stuff that's currently in production, stuff you can currently buy from a reputable manufacturer or distributor, and stuff that you can actually obtain if you want it. So I want you to think about these microphones and the preamps and channel strips and speakers, all the stuff we're gonna talk about. I want you to think about each of these things like instruments, because that's what they are. These are your instruments as an artist, producer, and engineer. This is the stuff that allows you to actually express your craft and express yourself. So when you see these price tags, don't be afraid, don't be shocked, don't be alarmed. Just understand that you get what you pay for, and if anything in this list is something you want, you can definitely set your mind to it, and you can definitely budget, save, and invest accordingly to get there. But before we get started, if you can do me a huge favor and smash the like button and smash that subscribe button, it really helps the YouTube algorithm to know I even exist and to bring this information to more people just like yourself. So without further ado, let's go. Let's start with microphones. First up is the Telefunken ELAM 251. I love this mic so much. It really sounds like its price. There's something about the top end in this mic that just makes it sound like every record you love, and it really makes audio just wake up, like whatever you put in front of it. Vocals especially for sure, but also guitars, upright basses, overheads on drums. It just sounds beautiful, sparkling, full, rich. And when you record with an ELAM 251, you can stack and stack and stack, do layers of vocals and guitars, and never experience the clashing of frequencies that can happen when you use the same mic on everything. And it's, you know, it's not the right mic for everybody and everything, but in terms of all the high-end expensive microphones that you can buy, I always go back to this one. In terms of preamps, a lot of the stuff I like is sub $1,000. You know, the API 512C, single channel of BAE Neve, like these are fairly affordable. They're not cheap, but I would not consider that gear high-end. So when I think about my favorite high-end gear that's currently made, in terms of preamps, I love the DW Fearn single channel preamp. If you haven't heard what a tube microphone preamplifier does to an audio signal, you definitely owe it to yourself to at least rent one and hear what it does. It sounds like classic recordings right in your face. It's beautiful, it's very wide open, there's a huge amount of gain on it. It's a powerhouse, it's a really great preamp. And because of that, because it's so supercharged and it's just one channel, you hear so much detail while still hearing so much color. Oftentimes high-end gear is either very colored or very detailed, especially preamplifiers. And so it's really awesome to have a preamp like the Fearn that is a combination of both, where it feels like it has just oodles of character, but also is very clean and fast, and the transients and the detail all come through very clearly, which makes music have energy, which makes music feel like it's an experience. So the Fearn and many high-end tube microphone preamplifiers just like that tend to have that feature to them. So if you're looking for a very hi-fi sound, regardless of price, tube gear can be a really quick way to get there and get that. Even the warm audio stuff, I know it's the high-end gear video, but if you need that on a budget, check out my cheap recording gear video. I talk about the warm audio gear a lot, and it's a great option if you want some of this stuff. But in terms of high-end gear, if you're looking for just one great channel of high-end preamp, this is definitely one to consider. Now, when I think about preamps, I tend to think about channel strips separately. And if you're not familiar with channel strips, they're basically a preamp combined with an EQ and usually a compressor. Just like on a classic console, you know, you would have your preamp, an equalizer, a compressor, and some other faculties to help you create music. A channel strip is just a 19-inch rack mount version of that, usually 19-inch rack mount version of that packs all those features into one thing with the power supply so that you can have a really great set of tools in one place. So in terms of my favorite high-end expensive channel strip, I actually don't have some really super duper crazy high-end one that I love. It's not cheap, but I love the Avalon 737. You're probably sensing a trend here. I love pop modern sounds because you can take those sounds and make them sound like anything you want, really. I mean, I know it's really great to record with an RCA 77 and get that vibe going through a Neve, but I like hi-fi gear. I like stuff that has a lot of energy and frequency content because it gives me more space to play with it. It gives me more space to play with the sound and create create something really special. The Avalon 737 has that feeling, has that big air, that depth, and it really is a perfect complement to a mic like a 251 or a Sony C100G. They just go hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly. So what I love about the Avalon is all of the flexibility inside of it. Even just the difference between the preamp and the line amp and how that can affect a signal, it shapes the sound so much. The EQ is so gentle and surgical at the same time. You can do really big moves with just little tiny tweaks, and I love that. I love when gear has that much wiggle room in it. Not to mention, that thing is just super cool to look at. These channel strips, they are really powerful mix tools. You can run things into them, print it back in. It's okay if you just have one, you just use it over and over again, you know? I highly recommend the Avalon 737 for high-end, expensive channel strips for your studio. Though I would technically count a channel strip as a piece of outboard gear, let's talk about a compressor and an EQ for your high-end expensive build out. This one's pretty easy for me. The Manley Verymoo really does something special that things that an LA2A or even the compressor that's in their Vox box, they don't really do the same thing. This thing is just glue. I love that it can be used mono or stereo. I love that you can run one channel into the other. The filter is really powerful for shaping the sound that's coming in. And there's really not a set it and forget it position. I love that. Sometimes the limiting feature works better than the compression feature depending on what the source is. Sometimes a little extra input gain is better and sometimes a little less input gain is better. It's really all up to you and the sound you're working on. I love that flexibility. I love that it's not just a one-trick pony. So it's a very flexible compressor. It does a lot as you're dreaming about awesome high-end expensive gear. And my favorite high-end EQ, pun totally intended by the way, another Manley item, the Massive Passive. This is a Pultec style equalizer that has way more flexibility than a Pultec does. Most of the time I find myself using this equalizer on the master bus to really wake up mixes at the very end of something or just to bring some more life to it, but they're awesome on stereo sources, things like overheads on drums, pianos, or even if you're using two mics on an upright bass, you can use both sides for that instrument. It's really flexible and does a very specific and detailed job while still bringing a lot of character and vibe to it. I couldn't leave off my list of my favorite high-end expensive recording gear without talking about one of my favorite tools, one of my favorite pieces of gear ever, and that is Barefoot speakers. Like seriously, I don't even care what Barefoot speaker you put in front of me. Any studio that has Barefoot speakers is my best friend. I love working in spaces that have these units. I feel like what they do best is they are fun as hell to listen to. They're so inviting and exciting and enjoyable while at the same time providing very accurate information for you to make decisions with. They're very clear, they're very detailed, and most importantly of all, what I expect out of any great speaker, actually any speaker, is translation. So what I'm hearing in front of a pair of Barefoots is what I hear when I go to my AirPods or what I hear when I go to the car. And that is worth its weight in gold. If you were like Brad, pick one piece of gear out of its entire list, I would pick that because it doesn't matter what you plug in. If you can't really truly hear what you're listening to, then you're going to make mistakes and you're always going to be chasing your tail trying to figure out how to make something sound better when you're not even really listening to the truth in the first place. I really love the Micromain 27s. That dual concentric subwoofer they have built into them really works and really helps fill out that space in the middle of the listening position. So you really feel like almost like there's like a sub floating, which is so nice. You're never really unsure of where the low end is at. You always know where it's at and you can still feel it low. You can still feel it kind of in your body and things like that too. So I think those are super special. And I also really like the footprints, both the O1 and the O2. Depending on the size of space you have, they both sound pretty similar to me, to be honest with you. But they translate so well. I did the entire new Laney Lou and the Bird Dogs record, Through the Smoke, out at Panoramic House in Stinson Beach of February of this year. And that's what I used. I felt so comfortable and at home the entire time. And when I got those sessions to my studio here in Nashville, they sounded just the same. They sounded just as powerful, just as rich, and I didn't feel surprised by what I had recorded. It felt like I had really done justice to the music and really knew I didn't have to second guess anything in the mix process. And just in terms of high-end gear, it's nice to buy a piece of equipment that is backed and supported, and if anything were to go wrong, that you can get help, especially with things like speakers and things that are not like easily repairable. So having a place you can actually send stuff off to, having a manufacturer you can actually work with is really important to me. And in terms of speakers is super important. So I highly recommend the Barefoot set of speakers. Whatever you want from that line, you're not gonna go wrong. They all have that Barefoot DNA, which to me means a fun listening experience and one that translates and creates more efficiency and impact in my work. So I highly recommend the Barefoots for high-end speakers in your dream recording setup. All right, well, that's what I got for you for now. That's my favorite high-end recording gear. I hope that what this list does is help to focus your dreams and help you to make sense of the pantheon of gear that's out there for you to choose from. And as you're saving up your hard-earned money and you're getting ready to invest back in yourself and do things for your career and at least for your collection of gear, it really behooves you to figure out what is the stuff that's actually going to help you make the best art you can and that is going to support you in the most efficient way. So I hope that this gear finds its way into your list because I know that it will do that for you. It's done that for me, it's done that for many artists, and at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is just get closer to our ideas faster. And the more that you add great stuff to that process, the higher your chances are of creating more special moments and really magical recordings for yourself and your art. If you've got some high-end recording gear that you love and I didn't mention, I'd love to hear about it. Drop it in the comment. Love to check it out. Let's nerd out on it together. Love to see what you're using and what you're dreaming about and what you're saving for. Definitely share that with me so we can chat about it. And if you have any other questions, definitely drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Or you can follow me on social and message me there. I'm at Brad K. Dollar on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and all those good things. So I look forward to hearing you and I look forward to seeing you next time. Stay tuned. Lots more on the way. Thanks so much. See you soon.